Yeah, I don't have all those, you know, high speed, low drag, like awesome intros like
Ah,
all you
well,
guys do, you know?
you got real quality. That's why.
Well, it's a good thing I'm so good looking. Otherwise, it'd be, oh, I think we're live. No, we are live. What's going on, everybody? It is Thursday, November 17th. And it's been a minute since I've done a video. And 8 o'clock. And who do we have here? We have the one and only John Burgess from Johnny B Guitars. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. Very excited.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you here. Um, I know that it's been a couple of years or so since you've been doing videos. Has it been more than that, or a couple years?
Well, for the EVH stuff, yeah, like all the Frankie stuff, it's been, I guess, yeah, about 3 years.
Yep.
But I've been on YouTube for what, 15 now.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
I've gone through my own guitar projects and stuff like that, doing build series and stuff like that. So it came time to do the Frankenstrat, and I was like,
Yeah.
all right, let's just do this. And falling down multiple rabbit holes. I mean, it means a lot to me. Like the Frankenstein is the number one guitar for me. It's not like, I didn't just go like, what guitar am I going to do next? Like, oh, maybe I'll do an Ace Frehley, or maybe I'll do this or that. Like, it's really the top. That's what got me into guitar building and really inspired me a lot. So it really meant something, and I really wanted to do it justice. So I guess I kind of did that.
Yeah.
I've fallen down multiple rabbit holes, and it's been fun.
That's what it's all about. It's all about having fun. I mean, I've been building these things for the last, I don't know, 25 years, something like that. Starting out, you know, um, I think my first guitar was a Fernandez Strat copy for like $125, and I'm into this Van Halen stuff, and I'm seeing Unchained World and whatever, and I'm pulling the pick guards off and just striping the pick guard because I know how to do anything else. And along 1996, along comes this guy Scott Smith,
Uh,
and like
yeah.
checking him out, and Jerry Leica and all these other guys, and I'm just like, whoa, this is crazy, it's just insane. Um, and then like I said, 20 something years later, you're like, wow, and I have this and divorced, and that comes with the territory with all those guitars. No,
Yeah.
but it's funny because back 7 or 8 years ago, we'll go through the chat here in a second and say hi to everybody. Just give everybody a couple minutes to jump in. But knowing Johnny Bean since 1998, I think, is when we first started,
Wow.
talking and on the Van Halen chats and the trade chats, all the bootleg stuff, and then finally, ultimately meeting him, years later in at the NAMM festival in California back in 19. So cool, and just all the people that you meet along the way. And
Yeah.
I remember a couple of years ago, whatever it was, it's very rare that, somebody on YouTube brand new, like, really intrigues me after all these years. It's rare. I have an amazing amount of friends that do some awesome stuff, but I remember one of the first videos I saw of yours was on the Frankie, and I'd gotten home late from work, and I'm like, huh, Frankenstrat. What, I don't remember which one it was. And I
Yeah.
clicked on it. And I'm watching it, and I'm like, wow, this guy knows this stuff. And I was instantly intrigued, like, damn, and this guy's like got this down to a science, like the shade and all that. And here I am, like, whoa, this is just not many people jump down that, we all say rabbit hole, but not many people really go in that depth as you did on that particular guitar. And just sitting back and watching, your videos, which we'll talk about, and what you've done, I was like, wow, I got to start following this guy. And then Facebook and Instagram and the messages. So it's just great that you're on the show. So I'm really happy you agreed to jump in, John. So thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely, man. I mean, this is an honor. I've followed you as well for years and admired your guitars, and the quality of each one has always impressed me. To have that many guitars and to have as much attention to detail as you do, that's impressive. And yeah, it's great to be here. and it's like an event tonight. Like, you know, you're saying your phone's blowing up and people keep messaging me like, oh, I can't wait for the show. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like this two you and me meeting on here in one show seems to really get people excited. So that
Yeah.
impresses me. Like, it blows me away, you know.
You know, I used to do a lot of shows on my channel, and just work and everything comes, comes up, and um, it's been a while since I've done one. So I thought this was a great way to kind of, kind of start back up again. And so it's great that you're here. But yeah, so it's like I said, it's funny when you look at the number of people that are into this stuff, this Van Halen guitar thing, and collecting these and building these. And back in the day, when I started, internet had just kind of come out, but we were still looking at circus magazines and
Yeah.
Guitar World magazines, and oh, a cool picture of the back of this one. Damn, now I got to strip my guitar down all over again and redo it. Um, and just meeting people along the way. It's just been great. But let's just jump in real quick and say hi to everybody. Before I do that, I would just like to we'll go through the names here and see who's here. But I just want to say, all the people that and I know I'm going to miss some, so please, if I did not say your channel, your name, please don't be offended. But Johnny Bean's channel, he's the one that got me started in this. Under the Bus Network, the boys from there, Kurt and Caleb and all those folks, I want to say thank you to those guys. The 5150 show, Andrew. Hope you're watching tonight, bud. And also, Halenville, the Halenville crew, Tony, Fruitcake Tony, and all those guys, and everybody else. I really appreciate everything you guys have done. You're just a lot of fun. So we got Paulie here. Paul, how was EVH Con? Unfortunately, I did miss it. I had to work, or I was actually on call. But I wished I could have been there, but I'll be there next year. Good to see you. The dude, what's going on? Rob Sells, what's happening, Rob? Robert Ranford, what's going on, man? Two authorities on Ed's guitars in the same room. It should be fun. Well, we're all just smoke and mirrors. I always say it's not how good you do, it's how good you look doing it.
That's exactly right.
You look like you know what you're talking about, John. If you
I
can't,
learned it all from David Lee Roth. That was it.
Yeah, exactly. An old boss told me, if you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with bullshit. Kevin, what's going on? How you doing? R2, R3, good to see you. Gearhead, 6 strings, 10 fingers. A lot of you guys. It's been a while. Good to see you guys. Nick, Hallface, Robbie Stengel. How you doing, Rob? I just totally am like brand new to your stuff. And watching your show on Johnny Bean's channel back a few weeks ago, I was just like, whoa, here's a dude that worked at Kramer. So keep up the videos, dude. I've learned a lot from you. Thanks for jumping in, Robbie. Let's see. Jerry, my man, Jerry Leica. Yes, Jerry, the Circles guitar is blue. It's not black. Yes. And we are going to talk about that tonight. And John has some interesting theories on that, which I think you guys are going to like. Cheetown Kid. Kurt, what's going on, buddy? It's probably a good thing you're in here. Otherwise, we would not get anything done because we'd just be picking on each other the whole time. Van Fo, what's going on? Who else? Everybody wants some. Hello. Let's see. We got everybody. I thought I saw Johnny Bean in here somewhere. Here's Johnny Bean. What's going on, John? How are you? I wouldn't be a show without Johnny Bean in there. Chili Beef, what's up? Dave GH, hello. Metal Mike, what's happening, Mike? Keith Johnson, Ty Price, how are you, buddy? Thanks for the text today. It's good to see you. I'm glad you're in here. CHS Custom Guitars, my good friend Craig. Hey, now, what's up, buddy? Get going on that music, man. Body of mine, please. Oh. Craig and I have this amazing friendship relationship. We see each other all the time. So he's always razzing me and I'm razzing him. And he's just an amazing, not only an amazing guitar player, I've just learned so much from him, but the builds that he does and the paint jobs he does are just incredible. Anybody out there looking for a guitar job, look up Craig at CHS Custom. Michael McGuire, what's up, buddy? How are you? Just got a big steel block from Michael the other day. It's going on one of my guitars. Let's see what else we got here. Trying not to make sure I miss anybody. And for those of you that aren't messaging in the chat, feel free to. I think that's everybody we got so far. Wow. So we'll stop and as we go through, folks, we're going to We're going to look at the questions and stuff like that. We have an agenda we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about some different guitars. Obviously, we're going to start with the Frankie because that's John's his specialty, and we've all learned so much from him. Dwight Bailey, how you doing, buddy? Thanks for coming. So we'll try to get to everybody's question as we go through. Keith Campbell, what's up, Keith? How you doing? Please ask it again, and we'll try to keep an eye on it. But we're probably going to be getting inundated with stuff, so we'll just do the best we can. Okay. Yeah, Craig says he's repairing my Ernie Ball Music Man. Craig, don't tell him why you're repairing it and what I did to it. That's a whole nother story. So, anyways, John, I'm going to throw it to you, and I'm going to go grab the Frankenstrat, mine.
Yeah.
And we're going to start talking about the Frankenstrat project. And if you could just start telling us when you built your first Frankenstrat and when you really started paying attention to some of these amazing details and things that you've done your videos on. I don't expect you to go through everything, but how'd you get started in it?
Geez, summer of 1983, really. Yeah, I mean, when I first discovered Van Halen and Eddie, something it just meant a lot to me. Like when I was a kid, I used to paint my own bicycles, and I didn't have a lot of money, so I was very resourceful in what I was doing. And then learning how Eddie was building his guitars the exact same way really meant a lot to me. So it stood out to me, and always followed him. Like it's interesting what he does.
Right.
All the details, and I'm a detail guy, so there was always something there for me to pay attention to. But yeah, the first Frankie was the one behind you here, or
the one that's okay. Yep.
Yeah.
What is that, John? What kind of guitar is that?
That's a Kramer. It's just a cheap kind of Strat copy Kramer.
Yeah.
That was 2006, and I really wasn't going on the internet like you were saying.
Yeah.
Just from magazines, stuff like that. At that point, I had wanted to do it for like 20 years, ever since that 1985 Centerfold came out. I'd sit and I'd look at it and I'd think, hey, I could build one of these. You just need like a Strat copy, and the stuff started coming together. The plan, and then finally, 2006 just became a moment in my life where I was like, I'm going to do it now. Like I've always wanted to build this guitar, and I'm going to do it now. And it really was the first guitar that got me back into building on a regular basis. Like it made me decide, don't just build a Frankie and put it away and go on, go from project to project. This is what you really like to do. So that was the first one. So it meant a lot. The ball's still rolling.
Yeah. So when you look back at that guitar behind you, that first Frankenstrat, and you look at the one that you're in the process of building now, obviously the Jump Frankie, the Us Festival version is your favorite. And I love that guitar too. I love that headstock. I'm a big fan. It's funny, over the years, I don't know if you can see, but there's two necks. You can't see which ones they are, but there's the hockey stick Tom Anderson style neck, and then there's the Jump neck. And then there's, my Frankie right here with the traditional one with the Gatto crowns on. Like basically this is exactly like it is today. What wasn't a Met, even right down to the thin brass Gatto block in the back and the whale tail bar on a standard German Floyd. So it's interesting. When did you really say, okay, I'm really going to dig deep into this Frankenstrat and get into, I know you were talking about, in one of your last videos, the grain, like right in here and everything, and digging into that, and the neck and the story on the neck with the three bird's eye pieces here is amazing.
Well, I put that guitar together and I thought, it's pretty good, pretty cool. I have one, I can look at it. But that's when YouTube and Facebook started to kick in, and all these groups started to come out, like the Frankie groups on Facebook, and people would put videos out on YouTube. And I started to realize that I could have gone a lot further with it, and the possibility for it, getting parts and things like that, information was out there. And I started, collecting little pieces of information, following the Facebook pages, And I guess I got to the point where, I probably knew about as much as anybody else did, but there were
Right.
still a lot of questions that I had that weren't being answered in anything. And that's really where I started to focus on looking at the knot. Where's the knot? Where we've all heard about it. Where is it?
Right.
And then kind of looking at that one photograph that made it obvious to me that that's where the knot is in the bottom horn. But I
Right.
have a background in woodworking, so when I looked at it, it stood out obvious to me. So things like that help me out a lot too. Is
Yep.
kind of that perfect storm where I have, I've built guitars for a long time. I worked in the wood industry, so I have that backed up knowledge of
Right.
how things work in a wood shop, the process. Everything's the same, but whether you're making coffee tables, doors, or guitars, the processes are all the same. So
Right.
when I look at a guitar, I can tell, like with the body, a little mark on the body, I know what it's from, like a
Right.
bandsaw. And then I go, well, why would there be a bandsaw mark? Yeah. So then I start looking more and more and just trying to answer all these questions that I've always had. And I don't know, I guess I'm lucky that I could find the right photograph and things like that can answer those things. But and have a knack at being a detective, I suppose, and just
Right.
being like a dog with a bone and not giving up.
Yeah. Were you able to go to the Met? I don't know. I know you've seen the pictures of the Met. Obviously, they came out, and I know they completely changed. Well, not completely. I want to be
Oh
careful. I don't
yeah.
want to too many questions that are already that you've talked about in your videos, but there's going to be a little bit of overlap, I'm sure. But you weren't able to see it at the Met,
My impression at the time was that, well, that whole show is going to go to Cleveland, which is a
right?
lot closer to me. So I thought, well, there's no point in trekking all the way to New York. I might as well wait for it to go to Cleveland. Unfortunately, the Frankie wasn't part of it. So it was kind of disappointing. We had this, like my wife and I had this whole thing. We're going to go to Cleveland and try to get, do all these things in Cleveland while we
Yeah.
were there. And so, anyway, yeah, it's too bad I missed it, but
I know when Scott and Adam actually went and picked up the real Frankie and brought it there because they're the ones that set it up. I was talking to them while they were in the process of doing that. And I think we didn't get too much into it, but I think that was one of the original plans that it was going to make it out to Cleveland.
yeah.
I think instead, what it was the 2012 Japanese white and black Frankie that ended up out there. Correct? Wasn't it that one that ended up there?
I'm not exactly sure because I didn't even go. I know his 2015 rig was out there, and I was like, well, I saw that live, so I'm not too
Yeah,
worried about it.
I got pictures of the black and white one striped, the VH1 style Frankie that he played during the Australian shows. I think it was, and then the Japanese show. I think that made it out there. I thought that was the one that made it out there. But
Yeah.
one nice thing is all the amazing pictures that came out of that, showing on this
Oh,
thing. I
crazy.
mean, I was lucky. That the gentleman that actually built this one, or not, what's a lock body and neck, but the gentleman that actually built this one went right off of those pictures after it came out. It was actually John Marks built this one, and another friend of mine, Nick Amendolora, built one for me too. And both of those were built or painted, I should say, right after all those pictures came out. So it was great timing. I lucked out because it's just so many little details. I
Oh,
think one of the things that you spoke about the most was uh I guess I'll just say I was really, really intrigued when I saw, because I got to go out and see it myself. And here you are looking at this thing that we've all been looking in magazines, at all these years, and, drooling over and painting these
yeah.
things and, debating on colors and all that. And all of a sudden, I was amazed at how shiny the guitar looked. And of course, it was behind glass, but it looked shiny, and it almost looked like a light red. It almost looked pink in some shades, but a lot of it was the lighting coming down. But
Yeah.
what you really pointed out, and I think you keyed in on, John, and I'll let you talk about it for a minute, was I don't think any of us, or myself included, we didn't realize that in the white, all of the sanding rough marks that he used with that high grit sandpaper that you talk about in your show.
Yeah. 80 to 60 grit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Now,
did color or samples where I wanted to find out what the grit was. So that's, a simple thing. You just start, 100 grit. No, that wasn't enough. And
yeah,
somewhere between 80 to 60. Yeah. Which
80
is,
to 60
if,
grit.
if nobody knows, that's almost the equivalent to like a sidewalk. I mean, that's
Yeah,
really
yeah,
super
right,
rough.
right. Do you think when he painted that, obviously we know that it was bare wood when he first got the body, and then he painted it black, and then striped it up and over time, and then white. Do you think that that black coat was a light coat of paint, that initial black coat that he put on there over the bare wood?
Uh, Depends what you mean by light coat. Everybody's coat is different. I think,
Sure.
I would say it was not super thick, but thick enough, if that makes any sense. Like I would say anywhere from 2 to 3 coats.
Yep.
Just going by the amount of sanding that he did in '79 with the coarse sandpaper and hitting the black. If it were really thin, he would have burned through it all over the guitar. And there's only a few spots that he burned through. And so it's thick enough that it could withstand sanding. But
Right.
there's a lot of places that he did go through where you just see the sanding marks, like just little scratches, and
Yep.
other places where, down near the quarter, like where there's a big patch, a big bare patch, and
Yep.
the back of the belly cut right near the front, like he pretty much went all the way down into went through the sealer in some spots.
Right in this area here, you mean?
Yeah,
Or?
right up by the top horn.
Yep.
Where
Oh,
almost like you could imagine he had it sitting on his lap and he's sanding into the belly cut.
yeah. It's interesting too, because you touch on a lot of spots on this guitar based off of those pictures. You really touch on a lot of like these areas right in here, which I thought
Yeah.
is really, really, really interesting, and how this guitar wore. It's not really good lighting down here, but so we know when he painted it red, and I thought it was interesting how you even what really fascinated me about John's videos, and talking to the audience here for a second that's watching, is I was like, wow, this dude not only like has like the rough timestamp when he painted it red, he looked at the Doppler radar weather alert and saw when there was rain days, and even had it dialed into what day Ed could have painted it. And I was just so blown away at that. And I think you had indicated that he had to do the red kind of quick because he was getting right back on the road again, I think, right?
Yeah, well, that's why I wanted to find out, Southern California, how many days could it rain, right?
Right.
So, there was a handful of days, and some of the days seem more logical than others, but we know that, yeah, he was cutting it close. He probably didn't have that guitar playable when they headed out on the road. In fact, we know the first night in Fresno, he didn't have the Frankie out on stage, so we know that it probably wasn't playable. So
Yeah.
that's how close it was. And talking to Walter, his old friend, he said Eddie was mad and angry when he
Right.
was painting it, and it was very stressful for the band at that time. They were $1.5 million in debt
Yeah.
going into
Right.
that tour. And Eddie even said that he didn't know if he should buy that guitar that he did Spanish Fly with. Like, can he spend
Yeah.
the money?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard to imagine that they made all that money, and yet at that point in time, it was pretty stressful. So why he ran out of time, who knows? I mean, he might have just been busy. Maybe he didn't manage his time well. Maybe there was just so many things going on. Also, I think at the time, I don't think to him the Frankie was what it means now.
Right.
This was '79.
Sure.
He had the Bumblebee coming from
Right.
Charvel, and I think '79 he probably looked at the Frankie as more of the prototype for the Bumblebee.
Yeah. That makes
And
sense.
so I don't think he thought, hey, I'm going to sand all the finish off and ruin this iconic guitar, because it wasn't yet.
Right.
People were just starting to figure out who he was and what this guitar was. So I don't think he thought it was a big deal to go and, try to sand off the finish or anything like that, or to change it.
Yep.
So yeah, his attitude was completely different than what we might think it was. 40 years later, it's,
Sure.
young Eddie, right?
Right. Well, you'd indicated too that he might have had a different idea initially on what he thought he was going to do with the paint job, and then he just got
Yeah,
pissed off and like was running out of time. I think you had said he was mad that the race was taking up all the ticket sales, and he was saying, that people were copying the guitar. So he was just like, "Fuck it, I'm just gonna,"
yeah,
just blasted the thing with some red paint. You
yeah.
know.
And that's one thing the photos really did point out is with the sanding, the aggressive sanding. Why would anybody do that? With
Yeah.
it, and it made you realize that what he ended up with probably wasn't what he was trying to go for. So why would you sand a guitar so heavily? Well, either he's trying to remove the finish completely or smooth it out at least so that when he paints it again, you don't see the stripes underneath, the
Right.
reflection. Because the white coat was pretty thick.
Right.
So he knew that if you just painted over top of it, you would see through it. But I'm thinking that he was probably trying to go back to bare wood. And he's done that before. The 61 Strat that he had in 76, he sanded all the finish off of that. I
Yep.
really think that was 77 when he painted the Shark. And I really think at that time he was intending to paint both guitars.
Right.
And it's quite possible that he bought all the paint for both guitars at that time. And then fast forward to 79, which is only, basically he did the Shark, went on tour, came back, recorded the album, and got ready for the next tour. So there wasn't a lot of time for him in between except touring.
Right.
So jumping back into, okay, I'm going to change the Frankie. I think he already had the paint. I think the paint that he used, the red, was really originally intended for that 61 Strat. Why did he sand the body if he
Yep.
wasn't going to paint it? And then, he never did. But so, that makes me think, well, maybe he was going to paint the Frankie like he was going to paint the 61 Strat, which is white stripes with a red, red with white stripes. So,
Is that sidewalk paint you were talking about in one of your videos?
uh,
It was
yeah,
too.
well, that was one thing with Jeff Paris that I talked to Jeff Paris and did the interviews with,
Yep.
and he got in touch with me because he used to be he used to work a stagehand union, and he got to work with a lot of bands, not just Van Halen, but because he was a Van Halen fan, he worked, kind of worked his way in, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, you want me to do overtime? I'll stay, that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
And he said that initially why I wanted to talk to him was because he told me Eddie told him that it was curb paint, and that made a whole lot of sense to me because before the Shark guitar is the first one we see that Eddie painted that was other than black and white. Every guitar before that was black and white.
Right.
And I always wondered, like, did he have a thing for black and white, or like why?
Yeah.
And when Jeff told me that Eddie told him that the original Frankie was painted black and white because he had leftover curb paint, I was like, okay, this fits every question that I had, right? So, Eddie always said he didn't have the money to buy equipment.
Right.
And being an immigrant family, I'm sure that they were both raised, him and Alex, like, you don't waste anything. You don't go out and buy new stuff if you already have stuff. And if they're painting curbs, I'm sure they were buying it by a box, like a box full, right? They're not
Right.
going out and buying one can of spray paint at a time.
Yeah.
So they must have had a lot of paint, black and white, and the white seemed to be a beige. And I here in Canada we don't paint curbs that like the addresses, anyways. And I started to do research on that. And the weird thing is, that's the two colors they use, the black and white. But more importantly, the white is a beige, and that's what the Frankie is.
Right.
That off-white color.
Yep.
And so everything fell into place. The more I looked at it, the more I investigated, the more nothing stood out as wrong. It all fit into place, and it makes perfectly good sense that that's where the paint came from. I don't know if it was Schwinn paint though. It might have been a different kind of paint.
Right. Right.
That's the hard part to figure out at this point.
And that off white you're talking about, I think that kind of like a Wimbledon white from the Duplicolour. It kind of
Yeah.
matches that in a lot of ways. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a lot of us use for all of our stuff. So my girlfriend sent me a text. She goes, "Geek alert."
Yeah.
I told Jess, I'm like, hey, if you're gonna watch, like, I hope you're gonna
Look,
be
it's just what I'm
mesmerized by my
talking
good,
about.
yeah, she's gonna have to be mesmerized by my good looks, because that's about the only thing that's gonna keep her going. No, I'm kidding. But she enjoys it. But Craig said earlier from CHS Custom Guitar, he said we're talking about weather and things like that. It's in the chat. I'm going to go back in a couple minutes and just make sure we don't have any questions or whatever. A bunch of the stuff you've already hit on, I've noticed, but we're talking about weather and Eddie painting the guitar in '79, looking for good weather. Craig says, was out painting guitars in 39 degrees in New York today. I can totally relate, Craig. I can totally
I'm
relate.
Canadian. I don't know what 39 degrees even means.
I know. 39? What? Yeah.
That's an angle.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. Jumping back to the Frankie for a second. So let's look at that day when he did paint it red and when he used the paint. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things I want to talk about, or I want you to talk about, but I also want to make sure we have time for some other things. And there is a little surprise at the end of the video. I'm going to play a prank call that you guys are all going to like, and the prank call is an audio recording. And I'll explain at the end, but I'm doing that in the spirit of John Burgess, because John always has this cool thing with his videos, where he has something cool and funny at the end, which is kind of neat, and I think it mixes it up. So because we had John on today, I'm going to put something on I think everybody's going to get a royal kick out of. But Michael McGuire sent me or actually, was it, who the heck was it? Hold on, there's a million people messaging me right now. Yeah, Mike sent me from Period Correct Guitar Parts, sent me a picture. If we start talking about the fogging on the back of the guitar, and here's the picture right here. And I'm going to touch on this because I know John has a theory on the fogging, and on the back of mine, it's kind of the same thing. You can see, again, the lighting isn't really that great, but
well, it's not a theory so much as there's a reason how it happened, right, and why it happened.
Yeah, theory isn't a good word. I think all these years, a lot of us, myself included, thought that it was just sweat, and like the saltiness of the sweat. And we're all trying to replicate that, and whatever. And obviously, we're trying to find a way to find that fogging shade, whatever.
Yeah.
And then after watching your video, and I'll let you talk about it, I was like, whoa, that makes perfect sense. So that type, getting back to my point, when Eddie painted this thing red and that day in '79, would you say it's fair to say that fogging was an immediate effect on the back of the guitar and we just didn't see pictures of that?
No, it's worn paint is what you're looking at. So it happened over time. If you look at there's a photo taken in Japan in '79 of the back of the guitar, and there's very little wear on it, just a little bit. There's no fogging at all. In fact, fogging is the wrong term because that's not what's happening. It's just worn paint. It's wearing thin. But what Eddie did was he put a white coat under the red,
right?
A very, very thin dusting of white, and that's what fools everybody. It's an optical illusion. And when you get the red over a black stripe and it starts to wear thin, normal, opaque paint, the red should have gone darker because the black is shining through it or showing through. But because there's a white layer underneath the red starts to thin down, the white starts to show through, and a little bit of the black as well, because the white was not a thick coat. It didn't cover the black. It was just a misting coat, very inconsistent all over the guitar.
Okay, so basically, if you looked at that coat after he did that, it really wouldn't look that much different than when it was black and white. It would just have this misty kind of a white mist over it, basically. So it wasn't a full, complete coat, then, is what you're saying, correct?
Right, yeah. And the reason he did that is because the Schwinn can, it tells you to do that. That's how the translucent paint. It's a candy apple color, so it's not opaque like all the paint that we're used to. You go to the hardware store and you buy paint, it's opaque. Most of it, 99% of paint is like that. Schwinn paint and a lot of other bicycle companies in the 60s and the 70s, probably the 80s, and maybe even now, I don't know, but they used this translucent candy apple paint because they could produce a lot of interesting effects with it, a lot of cool colors, and it was kind of like a competition, really. And they got very creative with it. And when Schwinn's, like a lot of the paint that Schwinn was selling, most of it was translucent paint, candy apple colors, and the Scarlet Flame that he used for the Frankie was a candy apple red. Now, if he painted the red on the guitar without a white coat underneath, you would only see the red where the original white was. So he knew that he knew that he needed the white coat, but it also said it on the can.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah.
but why he did a very thin coat tells me that he didn't fully understand that the white coat to cover the black had to be completely covering the black. I think he still thought that, okay, the misting was good enough. The red will take care of the rest, and it won't. Candy apple colors will never do that.
Right.
Unless you have black, which we'll talk about later on.
Sure.
But
so we're thinking that was a Schwinn paint, though, correct?
pretty certain it was. Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind. I found pictures of the can with that label. In fact, there's another color because it was called Scarlet Flame, and originally you would have to put a white base coat, then a pearl coat, which was also translucent. It was like basically like a clear lacquer with the pearl flake in it, and then you put the red over top, which is a translucent paint. So you get this very beautiful, thick looking, soft looking, not like a candy apple where it's a hard metal flake under it, but it's
Right.
the pearl coat. So it would have been a really nice, to look at a bike painted like that. It would have been pretty cool. I think originally he was going to paint like that 61 Strat. I think that's the initial idea, was to make it look really cool like that. But when he got to the Frankenstrat, he ran out of time. There was no way he could have put all 3 layers on in time before heading out on tour, and he had to cut it short.
It's interesting because this particular guitar, it's funny when we look at it, when I look at it in different lights, sometimes it looks darker, sometimes it looks lighter, sometimes it looks, it's always different, and it totally it makes so much sense why all these years of looking at pictures in magazines and then also pictures online. Wow, it looks dark red there. Wow, it looks bright red there. And the guy that brought the paint sample to the Met and held it up to the guitar, that was genius. So
well,
go ahead.
that was more the color, the shade.
Yeah.
Because I think the paint, what he was holding up was the Duplicolor, the Toyota 2 red, and so and we can get into the whole shade. The shade's not really like a mystery color at all. Scarlet Flame is what Schwinn called that particular shade, but it's really, you can look on the color wheel. There's a Wikipedia page about Scarlet Red, and I mean, it goes back for centuries. There's a specific shade, and it's scarlet. So that's, you go to one of the brightest reds that you can get to, and that's scarlet. So it's not like a mystery shade where they Toyota and Schwinn happen to hit on this particular shade. It's scarlet. That's all it is. But it's the type of paint, being a translucent paint, like you're saying, how it changed colors. Like we can look back at the Frankie over years and see that some photos it looks dark red, some looks bright. It seems to change color, and that's very typical of candy apple colors, because it's taking the light through that first layer and reflecting off what's underneath, whether it's a metallic or pearl or just white that Eddie had, it reflects back out. So I have a color sample just to show you.
Yeah.
These are both candy colors, except the one on this side, left, right. The one on this side is a little more opaque. You see where it's covering the black?
Yep.
You can see red.
Right.
But on this side, God, there we go. On this side,
I know. I'm so mirror image is always messed up. I'm like, whoa.
This guy doesn't know his left from the right. So on this side, this is a full-on candy color.
Yeah.
So you can see it's over silver, over white and then over black, it disappears over black. So if
Yeah.
Eddie hadn't have painted the white under the red, wherever there's black would have looked like that.
Yeah. See, that's so interesting. That's so cool.
See if I can get it to change color. If you look here, okay, over here,
Yep.
the white and the silver. If I tilt it back and forth, one will look brighter than the other, and then if I get it in the right spot, it'll go the opposite.
It'll go the opposite way. Yeah. It's so interesting. Yeah.
It's reflecting, but you can see, yeah, there you go. It's changing. So it's kind of, there's a lot of optical illusions going on with that stuff. I mean, artists use it all the time. Hot rod guys use translucent paint to create all kinds of interesting paint schemes. And you would look at it and not understand like the process that they would go through.
What I find interesting too is, going back to what you said earlier, and you said it in a couple of your videos, that Eddie probably initially had another idea for the guitar. I mean, obviously we know, he wanted to paint it red, or maybe we think maybe he did, but he was just in such a hurry and things weren't working out. I got to get this done. It's interesting. He just banged it out quick. And
Yeah.
of course, the interesting thing is it turns out to be the most recognizable, iconic rock guitar in the history of music.
It's crazy.
It's great. Eddie Van Halen's Frankenstrat is the most famous guitar ever in the entire world.
Yeah,
I would say. And everybody knows. I mean, even young people, older people, they see it and they're like, "Oh, that's that dark-haired, long-haired guy that played in that rock band." I mean, everybody knows who it is,
Yeah.
But what I find interesting is, I almost think, and I've thought a lot about this, and correct me if I'm wrong, or if you feel different. I almost think Eddie just, banged it out because he was always so annoyed that people were copying his guitars, especially back then. And we'll get into a couple of the things here in a minute of what maybe some ideas, what caused Eddie to paint that with the stripes. But it's almost interesting when he painted it red and he looked at it. I mean, this thing absolutely looks like total shit. It just
It does.
and I mean, anybody that looks at this, that didn't know, like, what the frick did you just do? That thing looks awful. You'd throw it in the garbage. And in the Jazz Oberlet interview back in 1982, Jazz was like, "Oh, hey, you still using the same guitar?" And he's like, "Yeah, just that red garbage Strat of mine.
Yeah.
Nothing sounds so good." He loved how it played, but it's almost funny because you can almost see Eddie looking at this thing when he was done, going, "All right, fuckers, go ahead and try to copy that thing." The thing that looks like total crap. Have fun with that one,
I think you're right. I think he was, he would do little things like, you think even the little jewel that he put in the pickup cavity, why would he do that, right? Just to see if people would notice, maybe, and like,
Yeah, I know.
It didn't make it sound any better. That's what he was really concerned about, was how it sounded. I don't think he ever really cared if it had paint on it. I really do think Roth was inspired him or pushed him to do something to paint it. But if Roth hadn't done that, I don't think Eddie would have done anything to it. It probably would have been bare wood still.
Yeah,
maybe black.
Yeah, he even makes that comment on the '96 NAMM show. When he's has the prototype black Peavey Wolfgang. They're asking him about the colors, and Ed makes the comment. I just heard it the other day. I was listening to it in my car on the way to work. He makes the comment, he's like, "Yeah, we have all these nice curly, flamey maple, tops." And he goes, "But I like the black and the white." And he goes, his exact words were, "I mean, it could just be wood, and I wouldn't care. I'm going for tone." And that's what he says.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, because that very well could have been. And, we hear, we'll talk about it, the Tim Hart helmet with the stripes. You did a video on that. The guitarist from the Dills with
Chip Kinman,
Chip Kinman. You did a video on that, and then Roth comes out of the woodwork a couple of years ago or whatever it was. Hey, I'm the one that told Eddie to paint that. It's like, well, there's so many different things, and then like anything else, whatever the reason was that he did it, when he did it, it was just like boom, and that was his thing, that was his trademark. Do you think? This is a question I've always wondered. And I know we'll never really know this. You probably have a better idea on this, but when I saw this guitar in the Met, I couldn't get over how shiny it looked. I couldn't get over how shiny it looked. And I understand the glass plays a part in that too, and the
Yeah.
lighting and everything. I mean, if I hold this thing up in the light, I mean, it looks shiny. I mean, I get it. Any of these guitars do. But do you think, and I know you talked about this in your video, I think you had mentioned that that type of paint back then has kind of like a shine to it. Do you think Eddie at all put any type of a clear coat? I know he never did clear coat on any of the guitars. Do you think there's any clear, even a light shade of clear on this guitar?
Okay, yes and no. Being the red is a translucent paint, basically that is a clear with red dye in it. So
Okay.
it's 100% clear lacquer, and then there's no pigment like what you would like an opaque paint. It's very different. It's two different worlds, your regular opaque paint and translucent paint. So that is a clear with red dye in it, but he didn't put an extra layer of clear over top of that.
Okay.
So
Okay.
over the years, it's gotten shinier, I would say. If you look at the very first photos in, I'm blanking on the name, but they're black and white photos when we first see the Frankie. It doesn't look very shiny. That would have been
Right.
right after he painted it. So,
No,
he's
it's good.
always said he used rubbing compound and stuff like that. So he may have, tried to shine it up a couple times through the years because, you look at some photos, it's shiny and then it gets dull again and then it gets
Right.
shiny. You
Yep.
never know. Maybe Rudy took a rag to it one day to shine it up,
Yep.
but it is a clear. So if you do rub it with a rag, you will get a shine out of it, or a rubbing compound.
You know what's interesting? I found this, it's really strange, and I found this by default. If you take a little bit of WD-40
Oh,
and
yeah.
rub it on one of these things, that actually shines these things up too. It's I never I forget how I found that one day, but if
Wow.
you just put a little bit of WD-40 like, to get some grit or goo or something off, it
Well, isn't that what
almost
they use for headlights too? You see these videos where they spray
yeah.
WD-40 on the headlight. I've never tried it, but I mean
I
it's
have found
petroleum, isn't it?
yeah, it's I've heard that. I've never tried it on the headlights, and like I said, I just did it on the guitar. I forget what guitar it was I did it on. It was might not even have it anymore. But I spilled some goo and stuff on. I'm like, oh, how am I going to get this off? And I didn't want to, I didn't want to put rubbing alcohol on it. I knew that would get the splooge off, but I didn't want to have it dull to finish because I didn't. It was right in a spot where I wanted it to be accurate. I think it was a backup Kramer or I had done or something on the 5152 or something like that. So I wonder if a little bit of WD-40. So I just sprayed a little bit on a rag and I just kind of rubbed it in. Lo and behold, I'm like, it came right off. I'm like, whoa, it's like there's this shiny spot on the
Wow.
guitar.
Yeah, I've
Um,
never tried WD-40. I would be a little nervous, but yeah, I'll
yeah,
have to try that out. One thing I use for like the Duplicolor, I don't know if a lot of people realize, but modern paint like that, it's designed in stages. So you have, your primer, and then you have your base coat, which, like, say the red, right? That would be your base coat, and it's
yeah,
meant to have a clear over top. So the red is kind of a dull. It's never super shiny because it's
right.
meant to have clear. And people are trying to polish it as much as they can. It's only going to get so far, but one thing that I like to use with that stuff with Duplicolor is it's a polished new finish. It comes in an orange bottle, and
Yep.
I used it years ago, and it's amazing how well it'll look like you clear coated the Duplicolor. It's really amazing how well it works. But just a little trick, it works better than some other polishes. I don't know what's in it or why it does that, but it's kind of cool.
What I find interesting is this guitar, the Frankenstrat, over the years has. I mean, you can tell there's certain areas of relic and dings and nicks. Like if you look at the body back in pictures of '79, like in the old Young Guitar mags or a couple of the other books that have come out, it looks, there's less relic and dings and nicks on it. You don't have that spot right here, which was from him wrapping electrical tape around
The
it for,
goop, yeah.
goop, yeah. But what's interesting
Technical.
is the guitar itself has stayed pretty consistent, and it did not wear like the 5150 did. The 5150 just wore totally different. I mean, the whole horn up here. I mean, there's a little wear on the Frankenstrat up here from elbow and stuff, but not anywhere near what the 5150 did or some of
Yeah.
the others.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, the 5150 really aged fast. I remember when it first came out, like Eddie's new guitar, oh, the new Frankie kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not too much longer after, you started seeing photos where it started wearing, pretty quick.
Right.
And, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was painted at Kramer, and it didn't get like your usual poly clear coat kind of thing to protect it.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. Maybe it got more wear. Maybe he used it more. I'm not really too sure. But I mean, the Schwinn paint obviously held up
Yeah.
pretty. Like it must have been pretty good quality. I've never had. We don't have Schwinn up here. We never had it. I don't ever remember as a kid. Like I used to play with a lot of spray paint when I was a kid, and that wasn't one that I could play with. So I don't know,
Yeah.
how well but it must have been a pretty good quality because when you looked at it at the Met, it didn't fade. It's still nice and bright.
It was definitely still bright. And I mean, we got a guy, in the chat, Robbie Stingle right now, that worked at Kramer and was right there when they were painting a lot of those backup Kramers. And I think, the 5150. But it's interesting because even the 5150, like, mine, I have an incredibly close copy, which we'll talk about after, but even the shade of that brightened up because all the outdoor shows and stuff. I mean, it's brighter than it used to be from what I'm told. I've never seen the actual 5150 like I have the Frankie. I've seen some incredible pictures that have not been published, which, helped and aided in the building of mine. But it must have been a different kind of paint. And, talking with Paul Unkert, they just used whatever they could. Some of it was sunset orange. I have an original can of that up there too, but sometimes they were a darker red. Sometimes they were this. I mean,
Yeah.
when they were painting those Kramers, according to Paul, he always told me, because I've met with Paul, from the tuners, if they were gold Gattos, they'd throw those on. If they were, chrome showers, that's what gold, jack plates, they'd use I mean, it just whatever they had laying around. I mean, his exact terms were willy-nilly, whatever we had.
Yeah.
you they just, but again, back to the Frankenstrat, it's really held up over the years.
I think too, the 5150, the paint is probably a little thinner than what the Frankie is. Like you can see the Frankie, you get a photo of it where it's reflection. You can see the lines of the paint lines,
Right.
where the tape is. Where the 5150 never showed that in any of the photos that I've seen. So maybe it wore faster because the paint's just thinner. The white seems to be pretty thick underneath.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. It's interesting. It's almost like on the 5150, the paint, the white paint was really thick. I mean, the only areas on the 5150 that you see, where it's worn down is, the pick scratches in down here, and then obviously on the back. But even in the, the horn here, it's all white. Of course, the 5150 is a lot more grainy too. And we never noticed how grainy the 5150 was up until recent, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago ish. We recognized that. But before that, we didn't realize it, and now we're seeing pictures,
Those high def pictures.
Yeah, it's crazy. But let me just take a quick look here to see what we have for question. If we have any questions to address, and then we'll get on to a couple of other things.
Yeah, I haven't been looking over there at all. To tell you the truth.
Yeah, everybody wants him. Rob gets younger every time I see him. Thank you. It's all smoke and mirrors. No, thank you. I guess the only thing I would say is it's try to take good care of myself and plenty of sex. And my girlfriend's probably blushing right now, but
I'm blushing. Jesus.
Yeah, Kurt, don't get jealous, Kurt. Yeah, Kurt and Lewis. Oh, Lewis is here too from Fairfield Guitars. What's up, buddy? How you doing?
He put a sticker in Times Square for me.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah, Lewis he just picked up a Kramer Ripley the other day. Real one. I was like, whoa, that's awesome.
He's really getting around with stuff. Eh?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. he was out here a few months back. Lewis came out for the day and we played, and we actually did a show, and he got to see the guitar museum. So that was pretty cool. What else we got anything here? Fruitcake Tony, how you doing, buddy?
Hey,
I did give you some kudos earlier, but I don't know if you were in there. Let's see. I'm just looking for some questions. Oh, we have one question from Holly Lewis. Says, did EVH and Al use Schwinn bicycle paint to paint the numbers on the curbs?
well, that's the thing, right? It's hard to. I mean, it's almost impossible to find out. I don't know what hardware stores sold in Southern California 40 years ago. I don't know if there's even a possible way to find out. Yeah. I'm assuming it's got to be lacquer, because right. I think, if it were any kind of cheap enamel paint, the Schwinn would have lifted it right off.
Yeah.
There doesn't seem to be any signs that it reacted at all with it. So
right.
It's probably a lacquer. It might have been Schwinn. I mean, I found an old catalog. I think a can, like the big can, was something like $1.99 or $2.99.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound expensive even in 79. So who knows right. what they were using. And I did find, I mean, black is black, right? Every right. paint company makes black. But I did find a Schwinn beige, ivory white, I think it's called. So, they did make an ivory. So that's, yep. Could be. We'll never know, I don't think.
Keith Campbell says, didn't Frankie get painted red upside down, which would mean like this, which I think you touched on this, John, and I'm just going to go say probably that's where the drip was down
when
here.
It was painted white, and when it was painted black, it was the way you were just holding it, because mm-hmm. that's how the drips are and the sag in the bottom horn. Right. So he probably had it hanging from the strap holder.
Yep.
But when it was painted red, it was the other way around.
Right. Oh, okay. So it was painted red like this then.
Yeah, because if you look at it, it's thick. The paint's thicker at the top, like where the horns are, and that's right. Less black stripes are showing through. But as you go down the guitar, especially around the back of the bridge, like on the edge of the guitar where it's almost all worn off, it's very thin there. It gets, it's almost pink, and a lot of the stripes are showing through because, he's trying to get the can underneath, right? And spray it up. So he's, you're just naturally not going to get it covered as well. And when I was talking to Walter, his friend from back in the day, he said when he walked in the backyard, he saw the Frankie hanging off a mic stand from a coat hanger. So it was through the one of the holes.
I used to do it too. Yeah.
So that was when he told me that, I was like, that is exactly the right way. If he had told me that it was upside down, I would have kind of went, I don't know, that's not what the paint shows.
Right. Yeah.
So he was dead on. He was actually 100%. That's how it was. We can tell what angle it was when it was being painted.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
150 question here that says the 5150 most likely have a JB in it before it got that Wolfgang pickup. Well, it's funny. Yeah, we believe it was a JB, the initial one.
That's what I always read, but
yeah. And we always thought that in '96 that he put a PV Wolfgang pickup in the 5150, and that's still what resides in there today. I heard some information back about 6 months ago that the pickup that's in the 5150 now, which we would all think is that same Wolfgang pickup, is actually a Zebra JB. That comes from someone who actually seen it. Now, I don't know if that was never a Wolfgang pickup that was put in there after that initial one came out, and it was the JB, or if it was a Wolfgang pickup and PV Wolfgang pickup, and at some point got switched out to a Duncan JB again after. I don't know, and I can't even tell you I'm 100% sure, but I do know that I was told by a reliable source that the 5150 Zebra that's in there today is a JB. So interesting, a little bit of fun fact there. Don't have any proof, but just kind of what we're thinking here. Craig said earlier, Rob's trying not to laugh at the comment. I there's a couple I got to chuckle at, Craig, but I haven't been able to look at them all. So let's talk for a few minutes about the Tim Hart and
Uh,
Chip Kinman mindset that you have there, John. Go ahead.
yeah, I got some photos in case anybody doesn't know who these people are. Let's start with Chip Kinman. I guess I'm sure everybody knows that's watching, but of course he's this guy, Chip Kinman of the Dills. Very influential punk band back in the mid '70s, and he's still making music.
That's so
But
freaking cool.
that's a striped Les Paul that he had, and what he used was electrical tape.
Right.
And I talked to him, and the story is that Eddie saw his guitar. And the fascinating thing about this is we have documentation that actually proves, well, doesn't prove it 100%. I said in the interview 99% or something. I would say that Eddie saw Chip Kinman's guitar. There was a fanzine magazine that came out in August of '77. It's a punk rock magazine that talks about all the punk bands, and they talked about a show that at the Whiskey, and the Dills played that show, and that was I've got the calendar. The cool thing.
What was the weather, John? What was the weather that night?
Actually, Chip Kinman sent me this. This was his date book that he had at the time. Incredible. So I have here. He played the Whiskey a Go Go on the 22nd of June and on the 30th of June.
That's so cool.
So those 2 days are probably one of those days that Eddie walked in, and there's a fanzine magazine that actually documents and talks about Van Halen being at that show. Yeah. And there's a photo in that magazine. It's all the timeline, right? Like timing of when these things happen. Here we go. This is part of the obviously you can't read the article, but if you look, right, there's that guitar. That's from that magazine, dated of August '77. So the information has to be at least a month old. Right. It's not brand new. I mean, this is 1977. It's not the internet like everything's out there today. But in that article, they talk about Van Halen being there at the show. So we know Eddie saw this guitar, and it was, in June. We don't see Eddie's striped guitar until July or August. And this is only 9 days after Eddie played the Whiskey, and the Frankie looked like that.
Right.
So it would be really unlikely that in 9 days, Eddie ran home from the Whiskey, took his guitar apart, striped it up, painted it, put it back together, played a show. Chip saw it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's too out of the other date that this is fascinating with Chip Kinman. They were in Up in Smoke with that striped guitar.
John, how long do you, well, this is a tough one, but how long would you say, because I mean, I don't obviously Eddie painted it black, and it was just black with that pickguard on it for a while. Are we thinking maybe it was just black before it had the stripe, we painted it white with the black stripes for maybe a month or two? Or how long do we think, because he had it, obviously it was wood, and he played it bare wood, then he painted it black. How long do we think it stayed black?
We don't know exactly. I can't pinpoint like day by day, but yeah, it was black for a while. I mean, it's heading into '77, early '77, it shows up bare body, and then we start seeing photos of it black body, and a lot of the photos we don't have a definite date. That's the thing. It's really hard. A lot of them are snapshots, like fan shots. We don't even know where they come from. Right. There's one set of photos where Eddie put a white pinstripe around the outside, like banding.
Yeah.
And we, I don't know what date those were taken, if it was after the Whiskey, before the Whiskey, May 29th. It's a little, at that point in time, they weren't photographed every single day. This is before the album. And some dates we do know exactly, though maybe a flyer, like the band flyers come out and stuff like that. We have a date, But yeah, only a couple of months it was black.
I find it interesting, all these years and how after all this time we're still finding things out. Like I remember, when I first did I mean, I have mine. I'm,
Hey, you're doing it too.
I do it too. I always do it. Uh, the destroyers, when I first, saw it, I'm like, oh, that's a burgundy and silver. And then there was a period of time where people were saying, no, it's white. It's
Yeah,
not silver, then we saw the on on the shark where there's the chunk of white here, and then Eddie did paint it white, and then he painted it so I mean
yeah,
it's amazing how after all this time we're still finding these things out, and you know through the joy of the internet, like
yeah.
all of a sudden these pictures come, boom, oh whoa, here's something we didn't see, or here's something we didn't know, and it's just so fun. I guess that's what keeps us all interested.
Well,
um
it's kind of cool. Like, there's probably so many photos out there in drawers that people have taken, say, back in the day at the whiskey, whatever. And people are probably thinking like nobody's interested in this photo. I don't even think I'm going to bother putting them online. But you never know if they have a date, if they remember when they saw that show and they put it up. The Bo Shannon photos that came out a couple of years ago,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, like he may not he probably didn't even realize like how important those photos were. He just realized that it was a young Eddie, a young Van Halen.
yeah,
But then, out comes the photos, and we all freak out because we're looking at a
yeah,
Frankie without any paint on it. We can see the actual wood grain. We know it's ash. We know, I mean, it was I was working on a video at that time, and I figured out that the seam was on a 5-degree angle, and I was using that one blurry shot that we had of the bare body Frankie, and all of a sudden the Bo Shannon photos came out and clearly show on the back that it's on a 5-degree angle, and it was
yeah.
exciting. I was jumping up and down my chair when I saw those
I
photos. I
know.
was like, I
Crazy.
can't believe what I'm looking at.
We got a comment here from CC. I don't know who that is, but how you doing? Thanks for watching. And he says Edward told me he tried electrical tape too when I told him I taped my first guitar when I was a teenager. Ed said it did not stick for him with the heat, sticky mess, but I did not ask the timeline. Interesting. Well, thank you for the comment. And
Could have been that white pinstripe he was talking about.
yeah, I mean the pinstripe obviously was pinstripe. It wasn't paint. We all know that, and
Yeah,
it's true because and that's why we saw a lot of pieces of it ripping off. And I've done them both ways, but my VH1 actually is paint for the pinstripe. I just said I don't want to deal with it, and I replicated the pull off parts to a certain timeline. But it's interesting because I think we all tried electrical tape at some point. One of the first guitars I ever did, I'm like, I didn't even know what Eddie did. I'm like, oh, this must be tape. So I put electrical tape all over it. And it's interesting because electrical tape is pretty much the same width. It's that three
yeah,
quarter inch width that, the masking tape would be.
sure.
But again, it doesn't stay that way. And, the multicolored tape guitar, the Pacer, that is all colored electrical tape.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's interesting to think what he might have done back then.
Yeah, we only know what we have photos of. We don't know, he could have done all kinds of stuff, and there's no photos to prove it, or that we'll ever see.
Yeah.
But Roth did, when Roth did that thing about, I painted the Frankie, it's one of those things where you got to read between the lines. I bet there's a certain amount of truth and a whole lot of made up BS. Sorry, I can say bullshit, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But you have to be able to sort of decipher, okay, what's a string of crap and what's not. And one thing that Ross said was that tape was used first and then it was painted in the negative, and
Negative image. Right.
yeah, and that does not make any sense because we know the guitar was black and then it became black and white. But if you think about the white pinstripe, maybe that's what he was thinking of. Maybe Eddie did more than what we saw, and what we only see is one stripe around the edge. Maybe he did more, and Roth saw it. Roth's thinking is all over the place. Roth was more, I think, thinking about looking in the mirror in '77 than paying attention to what Eddie's guitar looked like.
Walking down the street, stopping, doing his button
Yeah.
up, and yeah. So,
So I think what he remembers are, bits and pieces, but for his memory to, is a lot different than ours because we only have photos to go by. We can Google right now on the internet what we can, all the photos that existed, of the Frankie in '77. You can probably see them all in 5 minutes.
yeah, yeah. It's really it's interesting, and I honestly think too, we're going to continue to find out little facts and geeky things as time goes on, and people are going to come out of the woodwork, and people that didn't necessarily know this stuff was really cool, like,
Yeah,
hey, look what I have, it's amazing. There's still stuff like that happening, which still keeps the whole spirit alive and doing this, because ultimately that's what all this is about. I um on a side note, there's so many knowledgeable people out there, and every day of my life, my phone, I'm sure it still does to you, John, but my phone still blows up every day. Hey, Rob, what was this supposed to be? Or what did that do with this? And it's such an honor. And I always admit,
yeah,
because I've learned so much all these years, but there's still a lot of things I don't know, and it's speculation,
sure.
theory. So I'll give people my theory or what I think it is. But I mean, I've never I've I've never played any of Eddie's guitars, so I really can't, speculate totally what everything is. I can tell by pictures on what things are, with the Floyds and the Whale Tails and all the
Yeah,
crazy, all the geeking out that we do on that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it's we're still all learning, and I think the biggest piece is it's got to be about having fun. If we're not having fun and it becomes negative and people arguing and
yeah.
fighting, and
Oh,
I just back off, because I'm like, all right, that's not why I got into this. I don't make money
no.
off this. Obviously spend money on this, so it's not
Yeah.
worth aggravation. So once it's not fun anymore, it's I just withdraw, because
Well, I always
once
say,
it's fun.
I'm not here to try to change anybody's mind. Like that's not the point of any of the videos that I've done. If you want to watch, go and get something from it. That's great. But I'm not here to argue with anybody or to convince
Right.
anybody. And I think when people watch my videos, they realize that I work very hard at proving points
Yeah.
and not just trying to um, you're not going to see a video full of misinformation because I read the Wikipedia page.
Yeah. Yep. It's funny. I one of your um, videos, you talk about the Kramer. Well, everybody calls it decal. You call it a decal. So now I always go around decal. What decal? It's decal. I'm like, nope. John Burgess says it's decal. So
Well,
it's a
it's got to be decal because I'll tell you this, because when I do I'll test, right? I do my test decals to make sure they work.
yeah.
So I get to
I,
say testicle.
I think it's great, because who's to say that it's not process or decal or decal?
Oh
Who's
man,
to say that?
I there's so
But
many
people get
words that
so
people
fired up.
say
That's not
catch
what
me up.
it is. Oh, there's okay, real quick. CC, I guess his name is Nick. Sent me
Ah,
a message. He's talking to Kurt, Rob, the other day with our eBay names a few days ago, but did not remember an eBay name. Okay, now I know who this individual is. How you doing? I think they sent me a message on Facebook the other day of my GL2T, my Steinberger Transtrem, the striped one like Eddie's had. Um, if I think if I got it back from them years ago and I couldn't remember, that guitar has a whole history behind it. I bought that Steinberger GL2T Transtrom back in 1999, right after my son was born, for like $500 from some guy on eBay.
wow.
And I was just brand new to eBay, and the Transtrom was shot. So I ended up having to send it out to this company in New York called Pika Moose, and they put a brand new Transtrom in it. And I painted the faceplate, and the thing was like brand new. Well, a few years after that, I ended up selling the guitar because I needed some money, and I sold it. And immediately I regretted it. I'm like, oh, I'm never going to be able to get another one of those again. And like 4 years went by, and I want to say uh, it was like 2005 or six. I'm on eBay and I see this guitar and I'm like, whoa, like looks like the one that I had. I mean, I could tell by a little scratch on the faceplate. And back in those days, you could email somebody right from eBay. You could actually send them a direct email. They've done away with that. You have to go through the message process and
Yeah.
everything. And I said, "Hey, I is this by any chance the guitar that did you buy this or whatever for me a few years ago?" "Oh, hey, Rob, yeah, I remember you. This is it. We just don't play it. It's sat in the corner." And he's like, "I'll give it back to you for what you paid for it." I can't remember what the price was. Like, this is like 2005 or six, and I got it back. And I was so pumped, and I got that guitar back. There's only been a few guitars like that in my life I've been able to read,
Wow.
but this
That's
one
cool.
was someone I didn't even know. And the ironic thing about that guitar is 3 years ago, I brought it to Jeff Babbitt's from Headless Guitars in Poughkeepsie. And he rebuilt the entire thing, all new springs, all new faceplate,
Wow.
custom strap. I mean, it's like they just redid the whole thing, brand new fret job and everything. So it's like brand new. And Andy, you're right. Yes, Jeff is the one that did Ed's original Steinberger and then refurbished it back in 2015. So maybe that was you. I think Nick is his name. CC is what it's coming up here, but maybe that was you. And if that's the case, that's awesome. I have never talked to this individual since then. So that's freaking
Wow.
cool if it is. That is
Yeah.
the guy that I got that Steinberger back from is right in the chat.
I
Very,
love
very
cool
cool.
guitar stories like that, you know?
Oh, it's just amazing. But let's just chat real quick about the I want to make sure we got time. I mean, we're going to try to close it down around 10, but I do want to hit a few other things. How about the Tim Hart racing helmet?
Yeah, I was just gonna say we almost forgot.
Yeah.
That's the other part, like the other half, I guess you can almost say, of the Chip Kinman story. Let me see here. That's there's one photo I want to get. This is kind of cool. Let me just
Yes.
get right in there on the helmet. This is Tim Hart, and he raced motocross in Southern California, right in Eddie's backyard, and he retired in 1976. So he definitely did not get the idea from Eddie, and Eddie didn't stripe a guitar until 77.
Right.
And it's pretty much exactly the way Eddie would have done it. Just a roll of masking tape around the bell helmet, sprayed it with red paint. And I find it really fascinating the number on the side, right? The electrical tape.
Yeah.
And if you think of the 5150 guitar, look familiar?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I did a whole thing in my video where I connect all the guitars, and it seems like he was always trying to get back to the Tim Hart helmet. I think he
Yes.
saw the Tim Hart helmet in magazines. Maybe he even went to a motocross show or whatever. I definitely think he knew who Tim Hart was, knew about the helmet. When Roth was saying, paint your guitars, the connection wasn't there. He didn't think of Tim Hart. He was like, I don't know how to paint a guitar. Like, it wasn't his thing, right?
Right.
Saw Chip Kinman. I think that's when the whole thing, right? The light bulb went off where he was like, fuck, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Stripes, like Tim Hart's helmet. And I
Right.
think that's where the red came in, because this helmet was red. And the cool part about it is it's a certain type of red.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll show up here, but
Oh,
very
yeah. It
orange,
almost looks, yeah, it looks like the Frankie, and yeah, that very, to me anyways,
like the
that's so cool.
5150, right?
And
Like
the
that type
5150,
of orangey red.
yeah.
So, if you think of the like when the 5150 came out, the one thing that kind of confused me was the colors are opposite as far as how they, because the 5150 is white and then goes red, and then the black is like an afterthought. They spray it on after. The Frankie is the opposite, right? It was black, then it was white, then it was red. And I was like, why didn't they do it in the right order? They messed it up, right?
I know.
But
Yeah.
the Tim Hart helmet is white, red, and then the black electrical tape. And, I wonder if the 5150 stickers were him thinking of the Tim Hart helmet in a almost subliminal way. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, there's is it a coincidence, or was there a memory that, going back to Tim Hart? But it's really kind of a cool story.
It is a cool story, and it's food for thought, and it makes us think, like, I mean, we'll never know for sure, but I think it's just a neat thing. I mean, the 70s, mid to late 70s were a really interesting time. I mean, who knows if that was the case? I mean, I wouldn't doubt
Yeah.
it for a second. And the funny thing is the space tape, on the 5150. I remember, and I can't remember everything because our memories are so different, when from now and then when we were, 10 years old, whatever. But I do remember those going to the hardware store and seeing these red
Yeah.
reflective stickers, the boxy kind
Yeah.
of,
You
I
get all
remember
kinds of stuff.
those.
Yeah.
And I remember my dad buying them for like mailboxes and stuff, and for the side of a boat or whatever. I can't recall the details, but I remember seeing them. And I remember getting when I got into Van Halen and when I first did, when I first started paying attention to Live Without a Net, back in the when I first started paying attention to it back in the
Yeah.
early 90s, I was like, before I started playing guitar, because I didn't start playing guitar till 96. It kind of was a late start on that. But I was like, I remember those numbers, all those red reflective things, it's like, and I started really keening in, honing in on that and being
Yeah.
paying attention. And I could never remember where I saw them, but I know they were around even this area. So it
Yeah.
makes sense, and now of course, the whole, there was a whole big thing on the sides of the prisms. Like I can look at a 5150 on Facebook or whatever, and I can look at the space tape and think, oh, that's awful. The prisms are these tiny little things. It totally ruins the guitar if the prisms
Yeah.
aren't right.
Yeah.
And we believe the prisms are 3/4 inch, but either 3/4 or 1 inch. And EVH basically nailed it. And Michael
Wow.
McGuire also nailed it too. I got the 918V and 1984 stickers from him. So those of you that are doing those, Michael McGuire has them on period correct guitar parts. But it's the coolest thing when you're looking at these things, and they just look different. And
Yeah.
those stickers have held up all those years.
Yeah.
So it's amazing, what went through Ed's head. Like back in the 5150, because when he first painted it, he didn't have the stickers on. There was no stars on the
Wow.
headstock there or in the horn in here.
Yep.
And I think it was about, after the first quarter of that tour, 84 tour is when he finally put the stickers on that in the
Yeah.
84.
Yeah.
Pretty neat.
Probably found them in a truck stop or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's where you'd find those things,
Yeah.
in the, someplace. Yeah.
Yeah. Neat stuff. Neat stuff. Let's jump to the Rude guitar for a couple of minutes. And the reason I'm jumping to this guitar is because John actually just killed the theory that a lot of people had, myself included, up until about maybe a year or two ago, that the neck on the Star guitar, the Charvel Star, I don't know if you can see mine. Yeah, you can right there. The Dan Electro style neck.
The Dan Electro. Yeah.
Piano neck, the Coke bottle, like what are you going to call it? There's
Yeah.
a lot of folks that thought that neck was refurbished and reshaped and glued and whatever
Yeah.
to this neck that ended up on the Rude guitar in the 1981 tour, and then made another appearance on the Frankenstrat during the Starfleet project with Brian May, and backstage at the US Festival before he put the beak neck on. And John, you found the video of these two necks together at 5150 in 98.
That's what I believe the neck originally. That's the Dan Electro neck. So he
Yep.
didn't glue pieces onto the side at all. That's how it was made.
Okay, so they were just cut then.
Yeah, Dan Electro is an interesting company, right? It's they use a lot of lightweight woods like poplar.
Yeah.
For their necks, which I don't know if you want to get into the whole weight thing. I mean, that's a whole thing. But I'm not an expert on Dan Electro necks at all, but I'm assuming that's a mahogany neck, and then the lighter wood would be maple for strength, right? But mahogany's lightweight.
Yeah.
And I think Eddie was playing around with a lot of that kind of stuff. Light necks, heavy bodies, because he had the 2-inch, the Rude guitar, 2-inch body.
Yep, 2-inch thick body. It's real fat.
And then he's got a lightweight Dan Electro neck on it. So what the heck, right?
Yeah.
What's that one made out of? What wood is that?
So this is well, first off, Jerry Leica painted this body for me a few years back, and it's awesome. And I had a different neck on it. Donnie Ward custom built this neck.
Yeah. You would know a lot more about the necks than I do. And when I say mahogany, I'm not dead certain. I'm just looking at mostly black and white photos.
I think the body is mahogany. I don't remember. This one's just a rosewood neck with maple, maple.
Is it a poplar neck?
Uh,
Is it very lightweight?
Donnie, if you're watching this, he said he was going to watch. If you're watching this, Donnie, jump into the chat. And I got this neck from him about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And yeah, I mean, Chris Locke usually does the necks too, but I think Donnie did this one himself. And if you're watching this, Donnie, just chime in on that question because I don't have the answer to that.
Well, you can imagine, even mahogany is a fairly lightweight wood, but a 2-inch body is not going to be light.
Right. No, this is yeah, it's a heavy guitar, but I will tell you the neck is very light. Definitely is light.
Yeah. So that puts the balance of the guitar, where it's a body heavy guitar.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think Eddie was playing around with that. He liked the body heavy guitar. And you think, all the photos that we see where Eddie's holding up the guitar at a 90-degree angle where he's doing the Ice Cream Man solo, right?
Yes. Yeah, and he's doing that big
get that reach, is really difficult if you're holding the guitar down.
Yeah.
But you lift it up, right? You spread your hand out.
Yeah, you can do the spread a little bit better, right?
To get the guitar at that angle comfortably without holding the neck in place and the stretch.
Yeah.
You would need a body heavy guitar. So I was wondering if it was a playing thing that he was, trying to figure out, experimenting with, and working out these different bodies. Because there's the 80 Hog guitar, which is another experimental thing with a Dan Electro neck that he had. I was wondering, looking into this Dan Electro thing, like what was it with these necks that he liked so much? Because he was playing around with them so much. He had the dolphin head on the snake dragon.
Snake dragon, yep.
What was going on? Was it like the playability of it? And then I realized the biggest difference between Dan Electro necks and a regular neck is the wood, is the poplar versus poplar versus your typical maple neck, and it's a weight issue. Poplar is really light. It's very soft, very light.
Keith Campbell says that if he recalls that neck, this one was a poplar neck. And I'm going to go ahead and say I think he's probably right.
It looks like poplar.
Yeah.
Poplar varies in color. It goes from, light to dark, black, green. And then after a while, it actually turns color. Like the green will turn to like a nice kind of browny tan color.
Yeah.
But so the part that is dark would be the dark. It just happened that it was dark,
Mike McGuire says poplar neck. Okay, so it was. So that tells me that this is also a poplar because I know Donnie made it exactly like what the real one was.
Yeah, Donnie would be spot on. That's for sure.
Spot on. And I mean, this neck, I'm going to tell you, is just. I mean, I haven't played this guitar in a few months, but there's a video on my Instagram of me playing this guitar, and I mean, it just rips. It's so smooth. It's fast. I love it. I even put some Schaller double tabs on the back of it because we anticipate that that's what Eddie was using, Schaller double tabs on everything, on the Bumblebee back then and everything. And it's funny on this guitar, if you don't look at pictures, a lot of people thought there was not a string tree on here, or a string retainer, I should say, and there was. He's got it so close to the nut, it was angled like that. There's pictures of that. Pretty neat, but definitely a cool guitar for sure.
Oh yeah,
the Rude guitar. Let's jump down another rabbit hole.
Secrecy. Oh, what's it gonna be? Here we go.
We did.
This is a rabbit hole and a can of worms. I think we're gonna open up here.
Now we're gonna have some fun.
We're
gonna have some fun. So this.
I don't know how I got into this, but
I know. Yeah. I'll tell you a little bit about this guitar. This also was painted by Jerry Leica, 2-inch thick body. And we all know this is the Circles Unchained guitar. And uh, turned into the Rasta guitar. And as
Very
far
nice.
as we know, the neck that was on this guitar is the neck that's on the Frankenstrat today. It's the neck
I
that's
believe
on
so. Yeah.
today. We believe that, yeah. The bisealator was actually not painted on the real one. It's red. It's red tape. Like
Really?
gaffer's tape. Yeah, it's red gaffer's tape.
Where I'm not gonna question it, but like how do you know it was red gaffer tape?
So Jerry, you're on the chat. I'd like you to chime in on this because you're the one that told me that's what it was. And Jerry says if you can see the razor blade lines on the back of the Rasta where it pulled it off.
Okay.
And I hope he can jump in because he's going to explain it a lot better than me.
That's where I was gonna go to next, yeah, because you can see it in the Rasta guitar.
Yeah, he said you can see it in the Rasta guitar. You can still see it in the back. Okay, Jerry Leica says Scott Smith says that it was red gaffer's tape. And that's
But
probably
if it were painted, there'd still be razor marks though.
Yeah, and that well, I'm looking at the chat right now, and right, it would still have razor marks, but Keith Campbell says definitely red tape. Color pics show it up close. Again, I don't have the information like these guys do. Like I said, Jerry painted it. I know Scott is the one that has the initial theory that this is midnight blue. Now, if you look at this guitar right now, it looks black. But if you look at it in the right light, you can tell it's definitely a I don't know if we can see if you can tell it's a blue. It's hard to tell. Now it's hard to tell.
It is very hard to tell it. I think this is the guitar I've seen you have before where it looks a lot more blue, but
yeah. Now in the
this is
daytime,
almost kind of what kind of paint do you know that he used? Like, is that
this is a duplicolor.
Okay, it's duplicolor, yeah.
We're
not going to get into the same effect that we may think has happened to the real one.
Yeah,
which we'll get into in a couple seconds.
Jerry says razor marks on the Rasta indicate that they're cuts. So what he did was he actually this is red gaffer's tape, and it does look amazing. And even the cavity cover is cut with a freaking dull butter knife, just like that. But definitely a really, really cool guitar. Jerry did a bang out job on this. And I'm going to let John take it here for a second. All these years, everybody assumed that this guitar was black, not blue. And it very well might have been black. There's no proof that the guitar was blue. Yeah. However, there's also no proof that it was black. So I'm going to hand it over to John, because for the last 15 years, I've heard this rumor that this thing was blue. And I've heard rumors that Rudy went out and painted this guitar, and he's the one that got the blue paint. And John, I'm going to take it away because John has come up with an idea that when he told it to me, I was like, whoa, that's pretty cool. I like my copy now being blue because it looks black in a lot of shades, and I just think it's cool. So John, take it away because I learned something in this.
All right, let's try not to be too confusing, but yeah, I heard it from you. I was watching, I think you're on Johnny Bean or somewhere, and it came up, and I instantly went to those color photos, where he's in that room with all the guitars, right?
Yep.
Trying to look, and you look at the paint and you try to compare it to the pickup ring and things like that we know is black and it looks different. So I really I had no idea whether you were right or wrong or what was going on. And then about 2 weeks later, I found this photo, and I look up Schwinn cans every once in a while, just trying to find labels to read codes or whatever. And if you look at the lid, that's a black lid, right?
Yeah.
But it says dark blue. So I was like, okay, what's going on here? Schwinn made a color that looks essentially black, but they're calling it dark blue. And then if you read underneath of it, it says use with, and it has a code. And it's very hard to make out that last word, but it says aluminum. It's aluminum base coat.
Yeah.
So this tells you a lot of things here. And that coat is actually this can. Oh, it's not showing up very well in here. It's silver, right? Very, very flecky, very heavy flex silver.
Yep.
That's what it's meant to be painted over. Now, the thing is, why would you take black and paint over silver? It makes no sense, right?
Right.
But remember, I was talking about how Schwinn, most of their paints were the translucent, the candy apple. So this color, the can that I found, that would have been a candy apple black. So it's translucent. You spray it over silver and you're going to get the metal flakes to show up. That to me would be like a midnight blue, right? Now here's a fact about black dye, because that's what they would have had to use for that paint, not a pigment, but a dye. And most dyes are just a very strong concentration of blue. And this is where I started to piece a lot of stuff together. I've made candy apple black before, and this is a sample just to show here. It starts off very light down here. So this is like, basically one light coat, and then I would kind of double it up a couple minutes later and move along and get darker and darker. I didn't have enough dye in the first go here. I would have had a sample like 30 feet long before I got to black, but I went back and put enough black or blue dye, the black dye, which is a high concentration of blue, until it got to black. So here you can actually see it looks like black.
Right.
But until it gets to that, it's really just blue getting darker and darker and darker.
Yeah. Yep.
So
That's
if
cool.
you were to spray that paint that I just showed you, that blue can, on, say, the white body, you're not going to get a translucent look. It's going to be very much like the Frankie when he sprayed the red over the white. So if he sprayed it thick enough, it's going to look black, but actually it's a high concentration of blue dye, which is what the candy apple colors are. So it's kind of interesting because that brings in, remember I was saying how creative Schwinn and other bicycle companies were in their paint and different techniques. And so you can imagine if you had a silver base coat and you sprayed that over top, you would have, depending on how thick you sprayed it, you would have a lot of, a wide spectrum of shades. You could have a very light colored, almost black with the specks showing through. So it's not 100%, but it's the fact that Schwinn made a paint that's black, that's actually made up of blue dye, fits the whole story that guitar could be blue and it's actually black.
Yeah.
So everybody's right. And you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's so funny because I remember Scott Smith told me back in, I don't know, 2006, 5 or 6, we were talking and he was like, yeah, he's like, I think it's blue. And I was like, what? And that's back in the days when Jerry Likett didn't even believe it was blue. The Jerry and Scott and I would all argue, and everything. And I had a blue Circles guitar back then and I loved it and it was great. And then finally I'm like, it's black. And I went back and I had a black one. And then over time, I'm more open to different ideas as I get older. I'm less stubborn as I get older, especially when I find information that makes sense. And I was like, who knows? Maybe it could have. And the whole rumor, Rudy bought the paint and Ed was like, oh, well, it's going to take him for another turn. Because Ed was always trying to turn the corner on people because he was sick of people copying. This was back in 1980, 81, 81.
Or you might have just thought it was cool,
Or just thought it was cool. And like, so anyways, I was just like, the more I saw what the blue version of this guitar looked like, I was like, oh, like this is it looks black, but it's just cool. And I'm going to find a picture real quick that I didn't have handy, but I do have it somewhat handy. And there's a little bit of color shading going on with this this is a picture everybody knows, but it's a picture that Jerry and Scott said, look at this picture because it definitely looks blue in that picture.
Yeah.
So the picture I'm going to show definitely, like I said, it definitely has some there's a little trickery to it, I guess, to make it look a little bluer than it is. But what I found interesting in this picture is even with the trickery, everybody knows this picture. Even with the trickery, you can see the Circles guitar and the Frankie and the Rude. Now, the Rude is obviously black and the Circles looks blue, but look at the pickup ring and the tone knob. Those are black. So you kind of look at that and you're like, huh,
Yeah.
here's another picture. It looks blue, but look at that. There's something to be said there. So when
Well,
John and
let's
I
say
first,
when you say trickery, I wanna just kind of what you mean is like you've turned the saturation up in the photo, right? Like you
a
didn't you
little bit,
didn't
yeah,
lay
yeah,
like a
yeah,
blue mat over the photo. So
correct.
I do a lot of work with photo filters and things like that. And what I want to point out to a lot of people is a photo filter isn't going to make up anything. It's going to exaggerate what's already there.
Right.
So there had to be some kind of blue there to be exaggerated so we can see it more obviously.
And that's where I was going. And when I showed those pictures to John on Instagram, like a couple months ago, um, that's when I started paying attention to what he just talked about. And I was like, whoa, that makes perfect sense. I mean, we're kind of all right. I mean, everybody's
Yeah.
kind of right. Um,
Well, that's where the argument is because people look at it and go, "I see black. What are you talking about? There's no blue. I see black."
yeah, it's pretty neat. It's neat stuff. And that's why, like I said, after all these years, we're still learning and we're still figuring things out. Um, uh, it's neat. It's fun. I just have such a great time. But and I look at this guitar that Jerry just did such a kick-ass job on, and it's got the red,
Yeah.
the red gaffer's tape, which looks great. And I just even if there was no blue in it at all or anything in the real one, I just think it looks cool. So I'm gonna, this is probably the last Circles I have, but the real Rasta, which Dweezil had or has,
Yeah.
it would be great to see if we could have someone chip a little bit of paint off of that. But I don't think we're ever going to get that far.
Would you do it though? Would you? Scratch, scratch, scratch.
So R2, R3 locking that says, why didn't they make the EV8 Circles reissue that same color? Well, this is just going to, we could go on this forever.
Yeah.
First off,
The EVH, they're so inaccurate. It isn't even funny. Like
they're tribute guitars. They're tribute.
Yeah, exactly. They're tribute guitars. Yeah.
And again, I've been saying this, and John and I were just talking about this the other night. I hate to say this, but it's totally true. Eddie, when Eddie was around, missed the guy to death. You could not ask Eddie about his old guitars. You couldn't ask him about these. He didn't remember. As Eddie always said, he was writing music. He wasn't listening to the old albums. Eddie didn't remember he had a Kramer neck on the Frankie. He told a good friend of mine, "I never had a Kramer neck on the Frankie." Yeah, you did. You had one in the US Festival, and then you had the Tom Anderson. Oh, that's right. Eddie didn't remember any of that. So EVH, when they're building these guitars, Chip does an amazing job on this stuff, and they did a great job on all the the $25,000 guitars they did. But with the Circles guitar, nobody thought into what we're talking about. It looks black, so they made it black.
Exactly.
Nobody had a clue on that idea, and Eddie wouldn't have remembered it anyways. Eddie never remembered that kind of stuff. He wasn't paying attention to the Kramers and hybrid guitars he did back in 1981. He didn't remember any of that.
The Star guitar, all those stripes are the wrong size on the EVH brand. They're completely the wrong size. They're too thick. They're like 3/8 when it should be like 1/4-inch tape.
Yeah. And Robbie Stingle says absolutely. He agrees. He worked for Kramer. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, that guy's got some amazing stories. I've been watching some of his videos and his theories on stuff, and or not, I shouldn't say theories, but facts on stuff, whatever. But what I'm going to say is you can't talk to somebody that built these guitars 40 freaking years ago, 30 years ago, and expect they're going to remember the shade of paint they used. They don't remember that. They just use whatever they could, and it's only us nerds that do this. And And Keith says, we need a Rudy Laren interview. Absolutely. That would be
Yeah.
fantastic. I've tried to reach out to Rudy a few times and have been unsuccessful, but I don't even think Rudy would remember. How would these guys remember what color paint they got back in the day? Maybe they would. Maybe they would. I don't know.
Do you think maybe he, kind of wouldn't want to go against Eddie? Maybe, Eddie was his friend. He's not going to tell secrets kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Totally. Yeah, totally. Maybe. And that's the
those
thing. There's still a lot of this hidden stuff out there, that they're not going to divulge because that's still part of the whole, whole thing. So
when I
yeah,
discovered the gaffer tape, a lot of things came clear to me about transparency with, man, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but when they did the 300 replicas, there were things that they could have said and deliberately didn't. And the gaffer tape was one that really showed me, because when they did the replicas, they said there was a piece of tape left on it. They didn't say what kind of tape. They left it for us to assume they meant masking tape, and they left it at that. And then we find out, I'm looking at it, I'm going, that's a piece of gaffer tape. And, we painted, he used gaffer tape when he painted it. Okay, so 15 years ago, why didn't they say it was gaffer tape? Because they didn't want us to know it was gaffer tape. We'll give you a little piece, but we're not going to give you the whole chunk.
Right. Well, it's true. Sorry. EVH is building these guitars and they're not really fond of us building these guitars. So they're not going to give us more information that they're going to use, So, I don't build these things to sell them. I build them to collect them, I want the most accurate guitars. I've held my Frankenstrat up right next to the $25,000, Chip Ellis Frankie, and I'm still going to keep mine. Yeah. And I'm going off of pictures of the Met and everything. And I'll go right ahead and say it. I don't care. I don't have the money to buy one of those guitars, but even if I did, I'd still keep these because, the reflectors are correct, the right prisms, the tuners are right, and every little nook and cranny. When you're cranking 25 of those out versus just one, you can really be a lot more particular than just one. And the man that's on this call right now is going to have a Frankenstrat when he's done with it. That's going to blow away anybody that's ever done one, I would think. It's just absolutely crazy. I can't wait to see your next video, John.
Oh, me too. It's in the works.
Let's, you want to jump into, we got about maybe 15, 20 minutes left. Let's just take, before we get into the 5150, I thought we'd dive into that just for a few minutes.
Yeah.
Let's just see if we got any questions. Just depends on what color your base is. We used a lot of regular primer back then. No one read instructions, especially us guys, right? We don't read instructions. Let's see what else we got. Anybody got any direct questions for John? Kurt says EVH MXR chorus pedal is actually dark blue and white. Correct. Yeah, this whole Circles guitar is it brings up a lot of cool stuff. Keith says Rudy was probably wasted at the time. Yeah, probably. Thank goodness we all have a way to talk and research together to keep it alive. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Totally couldn't have been better said. That's what makes it fun. Yeah. We're still all learning. We're still having fun with it. The day we stop having fun doing this,
Yeah, no, there's no point then.
Oh, totally.
It's a blast. It's fun to try. People comment on videos like, I don't know why you guys doing this. Like, you wasting your time. You get a life. Like, you don't get it. It's a challenge. If you ever had something where you just wanted to challenge yourself with something, people do crossword puzzles or, actual puzzles. It's a challenge, but, to try to figure these things out. I've spent, how many years of my life doing this,
Yeah. I know. I have one question. What year was the first 25,000 stripped back in the 90s, if I remember? I'm not quite sure. You talk about the Frankenstrat $25,000 replica they did? I want to make sure I'm getting the question right. The $25,000 ones came out what, 2007, wasn't it? Around 7 or 8?
6, 7, yeah, somewhere
7 or
around
8.
there. It was the same time I was doing mine. I didn't know they were doing it. I just finished mine, and I saw a magazine. I started reading about how they were making 300 Frankies, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. They're doing the same thing that I was doing.
Yeah. Frankie Pickguard question: is the screw closest to the Floyd Rose smaller than the other two screws, or is the hole bigger? It looks like it's smaller with the shielding showing through. I don't. I think it is smaller. John, do you know what he's talking about? I think I know.
Yeah, I believe there is some different size screws going on there. Yeah, I
Yep.
couldn't tell you exactly which one at this moment, but you know, he was using whatever he had. But some of those holes he drilled, so they're not countersunk like the factory.
Right.
So some of them are, could appear larger. That could be as well.
Yep.
Some of them are rustier than others, so they look different size. But yeah,
Right. So we'll chat for a few minutes about this guitar.
Nice.
The
That is incredible, actually.
Yeah, this is the most accurate Frankie I've ever had in my entire life.
Yeah.
It's I mean the attention to detail and everything on this thing is just I'm blown away. This is my favorite guitar of all.
Wow.
I mean, right down to the video doesn't do justice, but I don't know if you can tell. I mean, the wood grain and
Yeah, that's awesome. Is that a lock body?
this is a lock body, and Chris Hubbard painted it for me, did an amazing job on it, and reliced it. This is an original Hanson Metalworks whale tail FRT5. It's not a remake. It's a real original.
Oh, really?
Real original.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
got it from Perry.
Now that's very impressive.
That's the real deal, not a
Yeah.
copy. And Mike McGuire's copies are just phenomenal. They're
Yeah.
crazy. Dive Bomb, Kyle Finch also does some really amazing ones too. Yeah, I got that from Jerry actually. And this is a PV Wolfgang pickup. And see what else. A lot of people don't know this, but on the back of the real 5150, even today, there is a hole drilled.
Yeah.
You can tell in the Guitar Aficionado magazine from 2012. Eddie was experimenting back in 2004 era when he played this guitar live again with a tone knob on the back, trying to use like a treble bleed, and ended up taking it off.
Well, that's something he did way back in the early days, even 77. You can see
Yep.
2 knobs, and you wonder what he was doing. It's interesting that he was doing it in the 5150 even. Do you get the crack on the headstock?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Yeah, this is a Glock neck, brand new one, the one that Locke and Donnie were doing. So it was started life as a Strat neck, then a beak neck, and then ended up this. So the pieces are glued on.
Yeah.
Same wood that Paul Unkert did, and they did that. But yeah, it's amazing. They just absolutely nailed it. And I love this. It's got the vintage prototype nut on it. I think on Eddie's today, it has regular clamps on it. They're not the whale tail humpback clamps, but I kept mine on there. Eddie didn't do this back in those days, but you can see it's got all the holes from the Swiss cheese holes from what it looks like today. But Eddie started doing this back in the 90s. He was dipping the number 8 eye bolts in Plasti Dip.
Oh, yeah.
Because he thought when you put the dog clips on, it would made less noise, metal on rubber, of course, so they wore off. So he dipped a lot of those in that black Plasti Dip. And then, they would just warp. Then he kind of stopped doing it. But yeah, this is a real cool guitar. So what are some things about this guitar, John, that you ever have plans to do a 5150 down the road?
I've gone on and off with it. I mean, I like the guitar a lot, and it would be a challenge, but I would like to do another Shark and do the same thing with it that I'm doing with the Frankie. Like just, go through every tiny little detail. And I've talked with Donnie Ward about working together on something like that. And I
Yeah.
also would like to do the circle guitar and take it from the circle guitar all the way up through to the
Yeah.
Rasta guitar. It's like actually, same with the Shark. I would like to start with the Destroyer and then paint it white. Go through every step. Don't just start as a Shark.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, maybe one day I'll do the 5150. But it's not my goal to do every single EVH guitar. Like that's, I have my favorites, and I certainly love researching them all. But talk to me in 5 years and see how many guitars are behind me. Then and you'll play
Yeah.
this and go, hey, you said you weren't going to do.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. It's fun, I mean, this guitar, like I said, this one is my absolute favorite. If I could only pick one guitar, even my Steinberger, this would be the guitar that I would take. It's
Yeah,
so exact. I've been fortunate and very lucky to see some highly unauthorized pictures of this guitar, and those were used. I don't have those pictures, but I was able to see them and get some really good feedback on this build. So this is my baby, and um, obviously the Gatto tuners, but the Schaller double tab on the end. It's pretty neat, pretty fun stuff. But um, this is a sunset orange, duplicolor style paint, and with a Wimbledon white and everything. But even to this day, I'm still finding things on this guitar that I'm like, oh, okay, I got to do that. But that's definitely dwindling. The big find on this one was the original Hanson Metalworks FRT5. That
yeah,
that was huge. I
that's
did
cool.
not replace the saddles. Eddie's got 4 of the 6
Yeah,
saddles replaced. I left the originals because I'm like, I'm not messing with that.
really. Ah,
Yeah. But the this is a basswood body. I wanted it basswood. Back years ago, everybody thought it was poplar. And maybe it is. Maybe it is. I'm not going to get into the debate.
yeah,
Paul Unkert says it was poplar. I think Robbie Stingle says it was poplar, and it very well might be poplar. But then the theory came out it was basswood, and then folks now are saying it's ash. There's a whole bunch of different theories. We could stay here till the cows come home, and people will be murdering each other on that debate. But I ended up going with basswood on mine, but it's very, very light. This is a wicked light guitar, and I've been told that the original 5150 is very light. Um, but again, I mean, there's just it's interesting because feedback comes back. Now we're back in the poplar phase. Folks are saying it's poplar again, and I don't know. I mean, I'll never know.
I never bought into the ash. It never. Well, I think people said it was ash because of the armrest contour where you could see the
Yeah,
grain, and people saying, "Oh, if it were poplar or basswood, it wouldn't show like that." And it's not
right.
necessarily true. Wood grain is wood grain, but uh, the parts that we can see the wood never look like ash to me. Ash is very distinctive,
Right.
and basswood and poplar have that. It's a very tight grain. You don't really see the same things that you would see in ash.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to say. Keith says, is that an actual crack or a manufactured one? Well, the actual crack it's manufactured.
He's
But
born.
uh, but the crack actually just about follows where it was glued on. Also, it's very
Yeah,
close. And this neck, actually, I don't know if you can tell. I'm gonna be able to, I don't know if you can see on the light, but the holes were doweled. It's hard to
yeah,
tell. You can
yeah.
see it.
'Cause it actually was drilled out. It was actual, like
Yeah.
probably one of those lawsuit necks, eh?
Yeah. This neck was made from, exactly the same way that Donnie and Chris made it exactly the same way the real one was, and the holes were doweled and the pieces were glued on.
Yeah,
So But I mean, the story was that Eddie threw this at Alex in 1990 after before the Cabo Wabo grand opening and broke, and then Music Man fixed it and all that. We'll never really know, but
Yeah.
definitely a fun guitar. Definitely a fun guitar. So yeah, but let's now we get ready to close down. But we can see if we
Wow.
got any other questions here. Can you believe we went through 2 hours, John?
Told you it's gonna fly by. You're going, how's 2 hours sound? I'm like, yeah, it's great, but
Yeah, yeah.
we can
John
do this all over again.
John Conklin says, "Good job avoiding the wood rabbit hole, Rob." Yeah, I'm not going down that one tonight. We'll be here all night. And Robbie Stingle says, "Poplar, I was there when they came out of the paint booth." That's awesome, Robbie, and I'm not going to argue with you. That's great. And I know Paul Unkert said it was Poplar too. So very, very cool stuff. Very cool. But I mean, yeah, we're going to go through all the comments and everything. But does anybody have any before we get into our prank call? Does anybody have any last minute questions for John?
Make
We
it a
talked
good
about,
one.
huh?
Make it a good one.
Yeah, make it a good one. Was the 1984 Kramer made to be the number one when Ed got it? Dave Nesdahl, bless his soul, a good friend of mine. Hard to believe he's been gone for this long. Dave Nesdahl and I always had a lot of conversations that the 1984 Kramer and the 5150, which were both built at the same time, we believe. He always said that the 84 was Ed's number one, and then right when the tour started, he went to the 5150. I never heard any concrete information that was true, but I don't know. They were both made at the same time, and I know Ed played both of them a lot. And of course, the 84 became the good enough guitar in the 5150 album. What else we got? Holly Lewis, we miss you, Rob Johnson. Please don't stay gone so long. I need people like John to wake me up out of my hibernation. Thank you very much. Well, I guess that's pretty much all we got. Fell down. Mike Mojo, yeah, it fell down in the 5150 studios as he threw it at Al. Yeah, that's what I heard, and the headstock broke. One thing we will mention is these necks. And this one's made exactly like the real one. And Robbie talked about this too. Ed wanted them cut incredibly thin. They're so thin. They're cut so incredibly thin. And they were not tilt backs either. And Ed always wanted this back portion right here. And I've talked to George Felice too, and he's indicated this. These were rounded. They're not like what you would get on a regular Kramer. They're rounded. So these are incredibly, incredibly thin headstocks. So they broke easily, especially with Ed jumping around the way that he did. I don't know if I ever told you, John, but when I went out to visit Paul Unkert back in 2016, we were in the shop, and Paul pulled out the 3 templates that he had.
Really?
Well, some of them he just cut basically, basic just cut. They were all cut different. But he had 3 templates, and one of them was the 5150, the other was the Hot for Teacher, and the other one was the Kramer Ad neck.
Wow.
And they were basically all just a little bit different. I forget. I think it's the Kramer Ad headstock, which is basically what the Grail, the Holy Grail Kramer headstock was based off of. But
those
really,
are probably handmade templates, right? I mean, they're going to be different from one to the other.
Right. But he had the original paper templates from the 80s.
Oh, wow.
The original ones. I got to hold the templates he used when those necks were cut. Wow. It's so cool, And Keith Campbell says Scott Smith brought his EVH neck to Con a couple weeks ago. Yeah, I've held that neck when I was at Scott's house a few years ago. You remember the ad, John, where the kids are playing guitar in the bedroom and Ed's in the window?
Oh, yeah.
Well, there's a striped neck, Kramer neck, in that window. And Scott Smith owns that neck
Really?
Yeah, wow. And he brought it to Con, so everybody was checking it out. Pretty cool.
I can remember the moment I saw that ad for the first time. Like how does that stand out so much? Like, why does that mean something? It's like seeing Eddie in the window was like, I don't know. It's like kind of like somebody looking in your own window. It's like, oh my god.
I know, right? And he always wore that jean jacket. He wore that for years, you know.
With the red patch on
The red patch, yeah.
yeah.
It's so cool.
On the cover on the cover of the magazine with the centerfold in it. Why do we remember this stuff?
It's crazy. John and I were talking earlier today. We were like, it's hard to believe that the stuff that we all geek out on, you know, that we just enjoy, and we build these guitars and we paint them, and we, you know, we change our minds on this, or this was green, this was blue, this was purple, this was red, this was whatever. It's hard to believe that there's so many people out there that also find this interesting.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. John Conklin says, surprised the 5150 didn't get broken or dented when he threw it to Zeke and it hit the floor in Montreal in 1986. I have that video.
There's a video, yeah.
I have that video. Throws it at the end of the show and it broke. I think it's on my Facebook page too. Well, we're gonna get ready to close down, but in John Burgess's basement. What am I going to say?
Live from John Burgess' basement.
Yeah, live from John Burgess's basement in the
from 1983.
Remembrance of that. Yeah, I have something here that I would like to play for everybody, and I think you guys are really going to get a kick out of it. John knows what it is, but I don't think he's heard it yet.
No.
Really interesting. So a guy that this is about maybe 12, 15 years old. I don't know. A guy that I knew used to do these, and this is one that he did, and it is on YouTube. And if you get on Google and you go to Realm of Darkness, celebrity soundboards, you can find Mr. Rogers, you can find Mr. T, you can find Al Pacino, Arnold Schwarzenegger. The list just goes on and on. And it brings up this huge page of boxes that you can click on from movie quotes of actual, you know, sound bites of what these people have said. From the movies. And you can just keep clicking on them. If you memorize where everything is, you will, you know, you can put your phone on speaker and then just put it down and then just click on all these things and carry on a conversation. Well, some people get mad, some people, you know, whatever. Well, anyways, he did this. He called a guy, and some of the little sound bites are Mr. Rogers from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood talking about a cat. And he goes into this real random stuff, and he comes off like this real creep. And obviously the guy didn't know who Fred Rogers was, but he keeps this guy on the phone for approximately three minutes or so. And this is the most hilarious thing. And you just have to like put yourself there. So I'm going to play this, and I hope you guys like this. And here it is. This is him literally sitting at the computer and hitting these little pieces of these little sound bites. And this guy's going for
it. Something, can I help you? Hello? Hello? Do you know who I am? No, I do not. This is Fred Rogers. Have you by any chance lost your kitty? I'm sorry, who's this? This is Fred Rogers. Fred Rogers? Yeah. Hi, Fred. Have you by any chance lost your kitty? I do not have a kitty. Well, I have her. Furry and brown. Hello? Hi, I do not have a kitty. Can you find the cat? I don't have a cat either. When you were a little boy, what kinds of things did you like to do?
Oh, God.
Who is this?
Oh, man.
This is Fred Rogers. Where are you from, Fred?
Where are you from,
Hello?
Fred? The Looney Bin?
Yes. Okay. Fred, are there things that make you angry? No, sir. I don't get angry much. What do you do when you're angry? Pray about it. Do you have ways of showing you're angry? No, I do not.
Oh, man.
There are no such things as real monsters. Correct. I don't like to see people hurting one another, but that's not what the game is.
Oh, jeez.
Fred, I really don't know who you are, sir. This is Fred Rogers. I know you keep telling me that, Fred, but I don't know who you are. Yo-Yo Ma. I'm sorry? What would you tell Lady Elaine if you were talking with her right now? Hello? I'm sorry, Fred. I have no idea what you're talking about, sir. No.
Wow.
Have you ever had a checkup? Sure. Did any of it hurt?
Oh.
No. Well, the doctor has to give you a shot. Sometimes that does hurt, doesn't it? Sometimes. Shots are like big pinches, but the hurt goes away after a while. Right? That's something that I know for sure.
Oh, wow.
Did you talk with the people you love last night about the things that you wonder about? Fred, I'm going to go, man. I really don't know who you are. No. I'm sorry. I remember one time some of our neighbors who were studying ballet dancing got dressed up to look like raccoons. One of them was a mother raccoon, and the other a father raccoon. And there was a boy raccoon and a girl raccoon, and they made up a dance about that family. Hello? Fred, I'm going to go now. No.
Now he's gone.
Have you ever seen anybody play the game called soccer?
And then finally the dude hung up. But you can tell if you pay attention that he's clicking the same thing over again. This is Fred Rogers, and he's just randomly finding these. It's so funny that people would actually stay on the phone that long.
And he never realized.
Never realized. And he had this little cat calling thing, like a little thing where you kept putting the meow button in the back.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Oh my gosh. Drives me. So if you go on YouTube, like I said, you can actually hear that exact same thing that I just played, but it's funny. So I thought folks would get a kick out of that. Just call somebody and ask them if they lost their cat, then ask them when they were a little boy what kind of things they liked.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks for playing that. It's I never knew anybody would actually pay attention, because I put them right at the very end. I'm like,
yeah,
that's and I keep hearing comments like how much they like these prank phone calls and the silly songs. I'm like, wow, okay, I'll keep doing it.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll get ready to close down. And John, I would like to say thank you so much for coming on. It's actually been an honor having you on here. And there's just so many things that we could talk about, and so many questions and things I'd love to run by you. I'd love to have you come on the show again sometime.
That'd be awesome. And the honor's all mine. And my little friend here helped me out quite a bit. So
yeah.
Honestly,
did you see my response to that yesterday? I said, "Oh, that's Valerie Bertinelli backstage at the '84 show, holding Ed's '84 guitar." It's funny. Yeah.
Thanks for having me on here. It's a great honor to be on here with you. And it's been like an event with all these people all week getting in touch with me. And you were saying as well, like how excited people were that we were going to be on the show together. And my mind is always blown how people receive this stuff and want more and find value in it, so it's encouraging to keep going.
Yeah. What Mikey Mojo says, Rob, ask him about Phil.
Oh, Phil X.
Oh, yeah. We talked about that though, didn't we?
No, I actually didn't. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Guitar.
You got we can take 5 more minutes. Go ahead. I want to make sure people get what they.
I don't know what he wants to know. Okay. Part 4 is coming up. The last in the series of that build, and it's the assembly of that guitar. So it's,
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, the SG.
Yes.
And it's really cool because you get to see Scott's paint job. I should really talk about Scott Bodden. I've seen him in the chats. He's watching, and both we're buddies. He's actually in a lot of these prank phone calls. We've been buddies for since grade 8. And he builds some incredible guitars. And right now he's doing a whole bunch of stuff with Jag Tana of I Mother Earth, a very legendary Canadian rock band. And I'm helping him out with I got a body over here. We're putting a guitar together for him. Well, I'm drilling some holes and doweling. That's all I'm doing. He's going to be the mastermind behind that. But Yeah,
That is
it's
so cool. That came out
but the
awesome.
Phil X guitar was a real joy to be part of, and watching him on stage with it. You know, I don't know if you've seen any videos where he flings it around his neck
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
he
yeah, yeah.
takes it off and he chucks it like
Yeah, I saw that.
20
The
feet
videos.
every night. And I get people come, like they'll see the show and it's like they're telling on him. They go, Johnny, he chucks that guitar every night.
They're telling on him. That's funny.
Yeah. Do you know what he's doing with it?
Like the little kid telling on the brother to the parents.
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
funny.
So yeah, so part 4 is coming up, the last of the series, and I'm pretty excited. Just it'd be the last video this year that I'll have up.
Can't wait to see that. And all your videos are just absolutely amazing, and I always learn so much. Like I said, from just the fogging to just the techniques that you use and the paint samples. It's all just amazing stuff. Learned so much from you, John, and having a show like this is great because I feel like I've gained another friend in the Van Halen community.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's the biggest thing for me. I mean, fuck all this guitar shit. I mean, it's nice meeting, that's fun, but I mean, it's nice meeting another cool person that has the same interests, and that's great. So definitely got to do this.
It means a lot more, doesn't it? Like when you can share something. Like if the internet didn't exist, I'd still be doing this, but it wouldn't be as
Right.
meaningful. And I think my
Totally.
wife think I am crazy, but because people follow me and seem to get something from it, she's like seeing what's happened from it. Like being mentioned in Guitar World is not a little thing. So
That's what I wanted to say. Yes, your mention in Guitar World was that was epic. That was epic.
It's crazy because you think like, oh man, you start believing these people that are telling you're wasting your time and all that kind of stuff, and then that happens and you're like, okay, maybe I should keep going with this. And there are people like you that are interested, and the people watching and that will watch this video in the future, and that's important. And I feel honored that anybody wants to hear anything that I have to say, and allows me to do it.
Yeah. That's 100% right. And that's what fuels us to keep doing these things, and that's what fuels me to keep building all these guitars is just everybody's interest. It makes it just as fun for me to enjoy them as it does to have everybody else chime in and enjoy them too. And I'm sure it's exactly the same with you. And I can't wait for the next video. But I want to say, obviously I want to say thank you for being here, and we'll definitely do it again. But I want to give, a shout out to all my Van Halen friends out there. All my New York friends, from Craig to Pete to all those folks, that are in this area. Johnny, I got to give credit to Johnny Bean. He's the one that got me started doing these YouTube shows on his channel back with Dave Nesdahl and Johnny back in 2015. It was just like, whoa, I can't believe all the time that went by. And here's an avenue to have fun and do this. And Johnny, the show you're doing tomorrow night with Jim DeCola sounds awesome. Can't wait to check that out. The guy that built Eddie's PV Wolfgangs, his prototypes. I have my red prototype Jim DeCola model right over there with the PV Wolfgang stickers on it. So that should be cool. But just everybody, all of our friends that do the YouTube shows and everybody that's had me on their shows, I appreciate it so much. And just everybody that watches, thank you so much for your interest. And I'm going to try to do more shows on my channel. Keith, definitely RIP Dave Nesdahl. Dave Nesdahl was one of my best friends, and miss him dearly. But thank you to everybody that watches these shows. Everybody stay safe. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and obviously follow Johnny B Guitars on Instagram and Facebook. And are you selling t-shirts, John, by any chance?
Yeah, t-shirts, stickers, and if you buy one and you stick it on something or wear it and take a photo or video of it or whatever and send it to me, you'll get in a video.
Cool. Because I'll be in touch with you, because I'd like to buy a t-shirt and a couple stickers. So I'll be in touch with you about that. Now we have each other's numbers, so we can text.
Actually, if you go to my Instagram, you go to the highlights, you'll see a thing right there for both.
Awesome. We'll do it. So everybody, thank you so much for watching. We will do this again. I am going to be doing another the show on my channel that's got the most watches is the 5150 show that I did. on this guitar, and there's so much more information out there. I'm going to be doing an updated show on the 5150. I'm going to be dissecting every little piece of this. I'm not going to jump down the wood rabbit hole on that too much. We'll discuss possibilities, but I am going to be talking about hardware, the bridge, the pickups, the tuners, the string trees, all the retainers, the neck plates, serial numbers, all that crazy stuff, paint and all that. So I'm going to be doing an update on this guitar soon.
Nice.
So keep your eyes open for that. Thank you everybody for watching. You guys are what keep everything alive. Love all you guys. And John, don't hang up. I'll talk to you in a second.
All right.
And have a good night, everybody.
Take it easy, people.
Rock on, peeps.